I joined TripAdvisor 5 years ago because of the brand. And I joined because of the challenge the brand had too. But I joined because of the brand, because it had trust. And especially at a time, I mean, go back to 2019, but it's even more prevalent now, where trust is fading. You're losing trust in online in general. Establishments losing trust. Everybody's losing trust. But then you have something that's pure.
In an ever-changing world that's all about staying connected, building connections, and seeing where the next collaboration takes a marketing campaign. From an initial brief to the follow-through, what paths are going to make a campaign success more than a possibility? Hi, I'm Brett Marchand, CEO of Plus Company. This is Partners in Possibility. Online reviews are everything in travel planning. TripAdvisor has single-handedly shaped the way destinations, accommodations, tours, and even experiences are reviewed. Traveler photos are uploaded, recommendations are shared on everything from where to stay, what to eat, even who to talk to at the front desk. TripAdvisor has set itself apart as the go-to for travel planning. Today's podcast will introduce the person leading TripAdvisor's global marketing team to discuss how TripAdvisor has become the world's leading and most trusted travel advice platform. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Matt Dacey, VP of Global Marketing at TripAdvisor, and Erin Georgieff, Managing Partner at Citizen Relations. Erin was an author of Plus Company's 2024 Travel Trends Report. We called it Traveling the Great Divide. Today, we'll also talk about one of TripAdvisor's biggest initiatives every year, the Traveler's Choice Awards Program. Well, TripAdvisor, a little bit about Matt's background. We're going to talk about what's going on in the travel industry. We may even touch on AI a little bit. So I'm really excited about doing this one. I'm a huge fan of TripAdvisor, which I think I told you already, Matt. I use it a lot, so I probably know too much about how it works and the communities, et cetera. But I think our listeners for sure will want to hear a little bit about you and just your background and how you got into a role running, in a global job like you have running marketing at TripAdvisor. So maybe we just start there. How did you get into marketing? How did you get to TripAdvisor? And what advice do you have for people who would die to have your job?
Oh, good. Well, hopefully not too many people. I don't want anybody to take it, but Brett, thanks so much. First of all, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and being on this podcast is exciting to me. So I appreciate you guys inviting me in the first place. And there's nothing I like to talk more about than myself. So thank you for teeing up the first question. But my background's kind of a strange one, which I think is interesting. I started to study entrepreneurship at Syracuse. They had the #1 entrepreneurship program in the country. Fell in love with it, obsessed about business books, starting businesses. I started a laser tag arena, which we had at a state fair. We moved into a movie rental delivery business, which I started with a couple other founders, which then we translated into a grocery delivery business. Then we translated into a grocery delivery software business. And we did all of these right before Netflix, and then right before Instacart, and right before everybody that made a ton of money. Is basically my timing on everything in life. And so
timing's everything.
Exactly. So I learned a ton, was super passionate about the customer at the end of the day, and also having an impact that's tangible where people can see it. Translated that into business school, where I went to business school and started in consulting. And my consulting was primarily in retail. So again, in an area close to the customer, understanding who the customer is, why they buy, how we can anticipate customer behavior. And then I think more importantly in jobs like I have now is how do you actually structure and execute to deliver for the customer? And I had the pleasure of working with a number of clients that had large stores, either globally or in the United States, just big footprints. And you learn how hard it is to take an idea from the office and to then go execute it across 10,000 stores flawlessly. And you start to understand why that experience is so hard in store when it seems so easy on a whiteboard. And it gives you, I think, a pretty unique appreciation for what it takes to get things done. And From consulting, I went over to CVS Health, where I worked for about 7 years. And there I led a handful of the largest strategic initiatives that the company, and CVS is huge, obviously. It's US based, but it's Fortune 4 from a company standpoint. And I learned just a ton. And a lot of my work was understanding customer behavior, trying to anticipate customer needs, and then delivering personalized communications. And so I had the pleasure of running a personalization initiative for over 4 years, where we really, really pushed the needle on what you can do from a personalization standpoint. Also then led the Extra Care loyalty program, which is one of the largest loyalty programs in the United States. And that, had a P&L that was over $1 billion, a large team there. I learned a tremendous amount and learned a lot. Again, a lot of this is from a marketing standpoint, really at its core understanding what customers' needs are and how we anticipate them and how we start to move the needle by delivering personalized communications to the customer. And so then I had this job that came in front of me now, which it's taken a twist and a turn. And back to my timing, Brett, I joined right before the pandemic and traveled. So awesome timing, about 6 months before the pandemic, but I joined at a pretty amazing time. And I know we'll talk a bit more about TripAdvisor, but it was at this big turning point for the company. And I wanted to be part of the brand. I wanted to be part of a giant transformation that I knew was going to be multiple years in the making. I just didn't anticipate the little blip in the middle of a pandemic. I'm super excited to be here. It's a phenomenal company. I have a privilege of working with and for amazing people at the company now. But that's my wild journey to kind of get here. And I think I've picked up a tremendous amount. And even at TripAdvisor, understanding SEO from, I would argue, one of the best search engine optimization teams in the world, performance marketing engines. There's been so much that I've been able to learn and then help grow here at TripAdvisor. It's been, frankly, a pretty fun journey.
Listen, I have to comment before we move on to TripAdvisor, because you're the guy behind the infamous mile-long CVS receipts, right? Which was spoofed like crazy. So, I mean, how the heck did you come up with that? Tell me a little bit about that story, because I think people would be fascinated to know that there was some purpose behind that.
Yeah, it's not just to be annoying. Yeah, and I would like to take sole credit, but it's a team of people that, at the very Extra Care, the loyalty program, had been around for 20 years. And it was a fantastic program at the time, super innovative. And we've always had these offers that come out of the receipt. At the time, it was one or two offers. And part of the job was to understand why customers are not converting to specific categories. So you take oral care. It's like a customer's been in the store 40 times. I hope they brush their teeth, but not one time in 40 have they purchased oral care. So why have they not bought it? And what can you do to overcome whatever barrier that is to conversion? It might just be, I just don't think of the store this way. That's not on my list here, whatever it is. And so we started to deliver personalized offers. Frequent customers haven't bought this category, but bought adjacent categories. And we started to introduce those offers in a personalized manner. And people started to use them. And then they started to use more of them. And it's basically something that, if you think about it, it just starts to print money, because you're giving the customer what they want, and it's starting to change behavior. And so then you go from, how do I convert somebody, to how do I actually drive a trip back to the store, which then carries a basket of $15, $20. And then how do I start to sell adjacent products? And so now you've got a conversion offer, you've got an adjacent offer, you've got a trip building offer. And then you're like, well, you know what? Partners will fund this, because of course, major brands want to have their offers there. So now they're paid for. And so then it's like, well, what if I did 5 more offers? And so then what starts to happen is you start to move, and people are attracted to obviously making money. And then people are attracted from a customer standpoint to saving money. And that's probably one of the most unique things. Like, we had a stat at some point that over 70 to 80% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings account. And then you think about the purpose back to that, which is like, Extra Care as a program in itself exists to help people save money. And so you start to create these personalized offers that are relevant, they work, people want more, and the receipt got longer. And I think over 3 or 4 years, we 5x the revenue. And we're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars in incremental revenue from a revenue standpoint through these activations. And then, of course, when you have partners engaged, it introduced a whole level of profitability. This is before the retail media networks, started to really scale. And so that's kind of how it came about. And then, of course, we had the internal debates, right? Which is like, okay, I don't want, like, why do we have a 14, offer receipt?
Yeah. How long do we let it get?
Yeah, and then it's like, well, let's shift to digital. And so, like the common thing is, of course, everything should be digital. So we put everything in the phone. When we started surveying our customers about taking away the paper receipts, they didn't want us to.
Mm.
And so you got a whole group of customers that are driving on this value that are saying, don't take that away from me. I like to cut those. I put them in my wallet. I put them in my purse, and that's how I shop. And so do not do that. And if you do that, like, A, I'll stop going, and B, you're going to lose a bunch of money. And so, it's been put the team in a predicament over the years. Everything's available in the app. Anybody can get it in the app these days. I've left CVS, of course, 5 years ago. So I don't know where they've taken it, but I still do get long receipts, but maybe they've cut back a little bit.
It's such a great example. We often talk about in marketing, obviously, paid, earned, and owned. And it's such a great example of how to use something that's owned, your receipt, to market in a really interesting way that I don't think anyone ever thought about before. So
I think it was fun. I mean, to your original point, right? So there was a point where Jimmy Kimmel had his goal in life was to eliminate the CVS receipt. And so you had, at one point in time, President Obama came on and he pulled out a receipt that he had from CVS on batteries. He explained that he needed the receipt and it was important to him. So it was fun to let that go. We had the Halloween costumes. It was a lot of fun.
Actually, 25 cents off batteries.
Barack Obama is here. You keep that and work on that. We'll be right back.
Speaking of earned, owned, and paid, Erin, I know you've been working with TripAdvisor and Matt for the last year. What's great about working on the brand, and what's great about it?
Well, first, the brand itself. I mean, it's an iconic brand. I think, with upwards of 130 million active users, it's something that most people are engaged with. I use TripAdvisor all the time in my personal travel planning. So in terms of being a leader in the category, they're it. And that alone makes everyone at the agency excited to be part of what TripAdvisor is doing and where it's going. The past year, we've really been focused on helping elevate the earned storytelling, really making sure that real people stories are getting told to the press, and making sure that the press are very familiar with everything that TripAdvisor offers to customers and travelers. And we've helped them with really amazing programs like their Traveler's Choice Awards program, which recognizes the best of the best in destinations and hotels and restaurants and things to do and beaches globally. So it's been an exciting time, and we're just thrilled that they're one of our newest travel partners.
For those of you who haven't used TripAdvisor, it's hard to believe anyone hasn't, by the way, but if you haven't, it's not an online travel agent, right? It's actually I think you guys call it a people-powered travel advice engine, which is amazing. I mean, I use it all the time as well. But I'm fascinated to hear about the story of how it was started, because there's always a nugget in the founder and the original ideas. Matt, how was TripAdvisor originally created?
Yeah, and I wish I was there. I know it was created at the upstairs level of a pizza store of all places. And so a pizza restaurant on the second floor, your classic entrepreneurship story. And our founder and our CEO for many years, until 2 years ago, is a gentleman named Steve Koffer, and a visionary legend within the travel industry and a mentor of mine, and somebody I had the pleasure to work for a bit here at TripAdvisor. And it's kind of the classic entrepreneurial situation where you've got a problem that you're realizing. And as Steve does with many of his problems, well, how do you solve it yourself? And the problem was, anytime he wanted to travel, he was super passionate about travel. at the time it was like brochures written by, companies just selling the destinations. And he had no way to get that real, authentic feedback and reviews. And so he started the company where people could share travel advice for destinations, for hotels. They could start to share photos. And there was nothing happening. This is 25 years ago. This is 99, 2000. And so, it was the first of its kind. And then it had that kind of rudimentary forum community drive where people just wanted to help each other out. And it just started to catch on like wildfire. But again, like many startups, there wasn't a business behind it. So he tried a number of different things, and the team tried it. This isn't just Steve. They tried a number of different things, and they finally realized, look, we're bringing in the most passionate, valuable travelers who might give us some money to bring those travelers to their sites, And so you started what at the time was a click-based model where, the likes of like an Expedia or a Booking.com or whatever it may be at the time would pay a commission to have somebody go to their site from our site. And so Steve finally unlocked that business model. Took I want to say over a year, 2 years. And once they had that, they had a recipe for growth. And so that allowed them to exist in business, frankly. And I think there were multiple times where they were on the last month where TripAdvisor wouldn't even exist until they pivoted a couple times and found that business model. And from there, it was really just harnessing the power of the community. And that is like the early days of network effects and community building. Steve really helped drive, and they since expanded it obviously from hotels to experiences to restaurants. And it caught fire globally, which is the other unique kind of value proposition, which is when you go to any country. We were talking about Tokyo before, Brett. Any country you go to, if you see the traveler's choice are the best of the best logos on that door internationally, you've got a semblance of home, you've got a semblance of trust, it means something from a community, and it means a lot. And that started to grow. Frankly, I was in the Caribbean a couple months ago, and I went on we went on some sort of boat excursion, and the boat next to me had a giant TripAdvisor logo on the side of it. And everybody's handing out TripAdvisor reviews, and it's still to this day extremely valuable to travelers, especially when you're going internationally. But that was the story of growth. And ultimately it's zigged and zagged many different ways and got to where it is today. And I'm happy to talk through the last 5 years if that's helpful. But that's the story of an inception, and Steve is to be applauded, as is the entrepreneurial team that set up TripAdvisor, because very few businesses make it a year, very few make it 5 years, and to have a successful, sustainable business that will be celebrating its 25th anniversary next year is pretty wild.
It's interesting because you talk about reviews and how important they are. Especially in this world now, right, where it's hard as a user or as a consumer to trust what you see online. There's all these affiliate sites who are giving reviews, but really just to be able to point someone in the direction of whoever it is that's paying them for the click, and or Google, is this, really the best place or not? It's really difficult. So it really is a differentiator for you. Talk a little bit about that. Like what's been the secret superpower? What have you done over the last 5 years in order to, stay in front of that? Because it's pretty daunting to go up against all these other sites, including, Google, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. There's kind of a couple of questions mixed in there. And I think the first one, though, it's not so much the last 5 years. I joined TripAdvisor 5 years ago because of the brand. And I joined because of the challenge the brand had too. But I joined because of the brand, because it had trust. And especially at a time, go back to 2019, but it's even more prevalent now, where trust is fading. You're losing trust in online in general, establishments losing trust. Everybody's losing trust, but then you have something that's pure, that has authenticity, like a TripAdvisor, like a community where people are just telling each other it's positive. People are passionate about it. Travel is one of the funnest and most experiential things that you can have in life. And so I wanted to be part of a brand that did that. And so to your question, at its core, we have a trust and safety team. that is built to ensure that we're maintaining that on our platform. And that is a constant search to make sure we're removing any reviews that might be fraudulent, making sure nobody's gaming the system, making sure there's nothing happening throughout this entire system that would challenge our authenticity.
Give me an example of one or two of your best marketing programs, campaigns, ideas. I mean, we talked about a brilliant one at CVS, but what about a TripAdvisor? What are you most proud of?
Yeah, I mean, we hit on sometimes it's these programs that have longevity, right, in anticipation and mean something, because our community isn't just travelers, right? The community is the hotels on the platform, the restaurants, the things to do. And so, again, I can't take credit for the ideation of the concept of traveler's choice and the best of the best. But if you talk about something that's rooted in authenticity, right? And so it's reviews, authentic reviews over the span of a year. So you can't just build anticipation 2 weeks before you're about to do it and push and tell everybody to click for your brand, click for your hotel. There's none of that. This is just purely the reviews on the platform aggregated into different categories and thoughtfully kind of gone through to make sure that we have the right winners. And it means something. And if you think about the industry itself, I was at a hotel a few days ago and I'm an early riser. So I was down at 6 a.m, walking the beach, coming back and forth. And they had an entire team. They were doing their stand up for the morning and talking about what the day was going to be like, what the weather's going to be like. The whole crew there, they probably showed up at 5:30 in the morning. And you think about it, they have to work so hard to be good at their job, let alone great at their job, day in, day out. That's a hotel, that's a restaurant, that's somebody running an experience. Got to be happy every day. You're going to get some customers that you wish you didn't have that would write a bad review if you had an off day. And at the end of it, we have the best of the best. That's the top 1% in the world. And
Wow.
so the incredible pride that I hope that our partners take in that, which is it's not a TripAdvisor thing. These are travelers saying you are the best in the world. It matters a lot. And because of that, I think, some of our partners do really cool things. Dubai won best destination in the world, and they set up drones in only the way that, a destination like Dubai could. And they had the whole award, whole drone set up, calling out them as the best destination from TripAdvisor.
That wasn't to get the award. That was to celebrate.
That was celebrating the award and celebrating the hard, as a DMO, like the people that work there, they care, they're passionate about driving people to that destination, and they should be proud because it's hard to win that year in, year out with everything that's changing, trends, et cetera. And, the Empire State Building they won, I think, best experience in the United States, at least. And they turned the whole Empire State Building green, the TripAdvisor green, which they've done 2 years in a row now. And it's just those kind of like stunts. But at the end of the day, that's for the people that work there. And there's a humanity in this business, and it is a person-to-person business. And so when we talk about a platform that we're excited about every year, year in and year out, and how we can celebrate different organizations, partners that do a fantastic job, Traveler's Choice is absolutely one of them.
We talked about earned before. I mean, this is truly about earned, right? Because you have to, any one of those destinations and or experiences or attractions or hotels or restaurants actually have to earn their place, and it's not just one review, one critic coming into the restaurant and into the place, which brings up an interesting question for you, Erin, which is, how do you make hay with that? How do you let people know about the Traveler's Choice Awards?
Well, I think part of like what Matt was saying is a lot of the celebration is actually happening with the award winner. So a lot of it is earned celebration, right? Like we're seeing a lot of our partners take the award and give it life and celebrate it. So that's an amazing thing that happens. But from a marketing perspective on the PR side, we obviously use it for storytelling with the press, and the high impact media love this program because they recognize that it's not about editors going and choosing or influencers going and choosing. It's about real people making the choices, and we're just feeding out the results, right?
Yeah.
So from like a media relations standpoint, we get a lot of coverage, and because we pulse out the awards throughout the year, like destinations we award in January and the beaches we award in February and so on and so forth, we're able to go back out multiple times through the year to celebrate, which is great. But then, Matt's team has a very holistic marketing strategy around fueling the excitement for it. But I think the beauty really is in the fact that the award recipients are so excited and proud and celebratory about these awards. And that gives it a whole life unto itself.
Do you think other marketers can learn something from TripAdvisor? Because, I mean, it's a very different platform, obviously, than what most people use, but or what kind of brands people have. But it's such a disruption, I think, especially in the travel industry, given it's so unique compared to everything else you go to. Do you think there's a lesson for other marketers in that?
Well, I think when I think about TripAdvisor, I think what others can learn is just, I think the power that it brings in terms of really bringing to life real people experiences. So I think it sort of goes to where Matt was talking about in terms of community, but I also think it's about highlighting those unique stories globally, right? Like, so communities, cultures, history about where they're going, what makes it unique, and through the lens of real people. I think today's consumer is so jaded by the fake, right? Like fake news, it's everywhere. So what I'm proud about in terms of working with TripAdvisor is just how real it is, and it's not forced. So you feel like when you go there as a user, when I feel like I go there, I know that I'm getting something real. I'm not being sold. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is hard for a lot of brands, but I think it's an important point because people are so jaded and just used to being sold.
When we come back, more from our discussion on travel with Erin and Matt. Welcome back. Next up, we'll talk about artificial intelligence and how it will impact how we make our future travel plans. You also have this amazing product, this AI trip builder, which I actually hadn't used it before, despite being a avid TripAdvisor user, as I said. And I have this little anecdote, which is we talked about these couples trips, so I'm planning next year's trip, which is to Havana. I'm Canadian, so we get to we can go to Cuba. But more importantly, I did a lot of work already and a lot of research, et cetera. And then it took me hours and hours and hours to do that and find places. And then I loaded it into your AI trip builder, what I was, doing. And I was going with a group of friends, et cetera, et cetera. I gave a couple of keywords. And I mean, I think 70% of what I had planned came out on your TripAdvisor. Or your itinerary, which is really amazing. So how the heck does this work?
Well, I would start it with AI has its greatest impact when it's actually solving customer problems, right? And so as we ground ourselves and look at what's happening on our site and our platform and then customer behavior in general in travel, the average length of time it takes to plan a trip is 41 days. So you think about that. And on average, people tend to go to, I think it's something like 30 different sites. And so you have this like iterative experience that takes place over multiple weeks that's complex, convoluted. It's a confusing journey, certainly to a marketer, because I have what is somebody trying to do on our platform today? Is it looking at a restaurant tonight, or is it actually planning something a year from now in Hawaii? And so, we have to mine through that data. Now, that's a problem. Now, people are excited about it. People like to do that. But what we try to do is simplify it to bring people closer to our value proposition. And our core value proposition is the layer after. the first part, which is, as you said, Brett, I'm going to XYZ destination. I'm going with couples. Here's the things I care about. Here's what I'm passionate about. And the team, the data science team here, has done a phenomenal job pulling out an entire itinerary. That's a mouthful. An entire itinerary that then provides things to do, hotels and restaurants, right? And of course, nobody's going to take that list and just be like, I'm going to go do this exact itinerary tomorrow. I'm glad that it hit 70% of your use case, but it takes what takes a long time, jumping across experiences, looking through restaurants, sorting, finding something, to be able to quickly shortlist and save, and then click into those and start to digest the reviews, right? Because that again goes back to, how do I take something with generative AI, which gives me really good recommendations, and then find the human truth behind it, which is the actual content that's our users providing from a person to person level. And so the problem was, obviously it takes a long time to plan travel, as you alluded to. We can shorten that at least to give you a curated list using generative AI. But we believe the passionate travelers that exist on our platform still need that next level of insight. And if I can dramatically reduce the time it takes you to get to the things to do, the restaurants or the hotels that you might be interested in, and get you that real content, that is a huge win. And we're seeing it in our product. It's like the engagement's through the roof. The revenue that comes out of this is through the roof. Adoption's through the roof. So it's super exciting. And we think it's differentiated, right? Because it's grounded in the actual content on our platform that is over 1 billion contributions from other people. So,
well, two unique things you have, I think, because, AI models are all about the data that you put in it. And the amount of data, et cetera. And, the two key things that you have are the reviews, as you just talked about, because I presume that if you go to ChatGPT and say, build me an itinerary for Havana, as an example, that's going to ingest a whole bunch of fake reviews and everything else that's there, right? Because it can't really tell the difference. The second thing is it's real time, right? Because people are like, presumably if a restaurant or a destination or an experience has suddenly gone downhill, you're going to know. But those other large language models are using data from 2 years ago, because you don't build a model every week, et cetera.
right.
And I guess maybe a third thing, which is the long tail, as you discussed, right? Like you're actually, most large language models and AI platforms would look at, well, where's the places and or things and or restaurants and or destinations, et cetera, that the most people go to, where, and you would miss the hidden gems, which you can actually ask for on the platform, but presumably you will also get a bunch of recommendations.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix right now, if you think about it, like, those that are frequent users of any of these AI platforms are appreciating the nuance of prompting and how good you have to be to really get to the thing. Like, you can get great at that and get to the longest multiple sentences, and then you get something very specific. I think the average user, this hybrid approach is something we might start to see, which is give me a handful of options. And then that's what we're doing right now primarily. It's like, who are you traveling with? And then tell me a little bit of what you're interested in. You can choose from a list. It makes it a bit easier. So it's not all reliant on you prompting everything perfectly. And I do think that brings you better, more unique results that ultimately get to what might, a sophisticated person that knows exactly how to enter into these systems might get to. And it's going to be interesting. I think we'll land on a place that's a bit more hybrid of both. But I do think, to your point, because of the way it's structured, it surfaces for the vast majority of people pretty unique offerings that are both tied to obviously the reviews on our platform, but also the simplicity of what you're entering.
But it must be a challenge, Erin. I mean, like, as you're advising Matt and the TripAdvisor team on how to go to market with this, I mean, one of the challenges, I presume, is that you've got a community-based, actual experience. And then on the other hand, you've got this AI engine, which, I mean, just from a communication standpoint, is that a challenge? How do you talk about those two things?
I mean, I think it's sort of thinking about it from the consumer's standpoint and what is going to resonate with the different types of audiences that you're trying to speak to. And I think there's a place for both, right? For every consumer. I think there's such a wonderful place to be in the community forums. But I think in terms of the ease of use and making it fast, the AI tool is incredible. So I don't think we have to think about them as two totally separate entities, but rather how do you use them both together to build the best experience for your next trip. And I think that's really what TripAdvisor does so well, is it's giving options, but it's also making sure that it's very much personalized to you.
I have one request, which is please don't tell all the couples that I plan the trips for every year that this thing exists, because otherwise they won't come on buying trips.
I know. Somebody just asked me for advice. I was like, oh, I'll get you some advice pretty easily.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really fascinating. I mean, the brand is obviously interesting. Your career, Matt, has been really interesting to watch. I'm sure you're going to do other great things. The travel industry, I just think, is like ripe for all kinds of disruption and change, and I'm sure you guys will be in the middle of it. It's been a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate the time that you both spent with me on this, and great example of partners in possibility.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Brett Marchand. Thanks for listening to this episode of Partners in Possibility. I hope it provided some insight into one of the world's most disruptive brands.